Hello, everyone, and welcome to our final rendition of our Thought Imports Live for this month. So, big thank you to everyone, and a big shout out to the core team for bringing this series to life. And we are ending with a very special guest, dear friend Joshua Ness, who is joining us from Brooklyn, New York. Joshua is the senior manager at Verizon 5G Labs in New York City. We met back years ago through the Startup Grind New York City family. We just kind of really hit it off in terms of our passion for tech, for marketing, and I'm so happy we've stayed in touch to be able to bring this conversation to our series. So at Verizon 5G, Joshua partners with enterprise startups, enterprise startups and academic teams to drive innovation around 5G and co-create 5G concepts. And with 5G coming to Greece, with news of 5G coming to Greece in the next year or so, and kind of penetrating its way around other markets to make all of this high-tech access available to everyone. This is going to be a specifically exciting conversation to have. Joshua also works to educate, inspire, and connect the dots for businesses interested in moving forward with emerging technology. So without further ado, we will dive right into the interview. Hello, Joshua. Welcome.
Hey, how's it going? How you doing? How is everybody?
Doing well. Thank you for joining us. And would you like to share a little bit about yourself, your background, your passions that we didn't cover previously?
Oh my gosh, it reads like an OkCupid profile. I'll tell you what. I work with Verizon 5G Labs. My job there, our team's job, is very simple, but also it is no small task. Our job is to predict the future. And when I say that, I mean that 5G is going to represent this advanced layer of connectivity that is going to essentially raise the tide. And just in the same way that 4G did, along with advanced hardware like the iPhone when it was first released in 2007, 4G being released in 2010, right about that time that where hardware and connectivity met in equilibrium around 2010, 2011, you started to see this rise and this explosion of new applications and new ways to use technology. New companies were born or exploded in popularity and market share. Companies like Facebook and Amazon and Netflix and all those companies like that. The gig economy was born out of 4G and the ability to have access to files, streaming video, and all the stuff that we take advantage of today. And we know that 5G represents a monumental shift in the way that we think about connectivity, and it will bring advancements in hardware along with it. If any of you are, as we're taping this, Augmented World Expo is currently going on virtually. Usually it's in California as well as Germany, I think. But it's virtual, of course, now, like we all are. And there are some companies that are talking about some really amazing advancements in both hardware and chipsets and software that are going to ride on those chipsets to enable 5G connected virtual and augmented reality experiences. And so we're in this very new stage of what is being dubbed the fourth industrial revolution, which is going to be this cyber-connected economy and this cyber-connected society where it's not just going to be a single device that you have with you. You're going to have all sorts of connected, you're going to have ecosystems of connected devices that are able to provide new experiences. And so that's going to span both consumer use cases, very much like we saw with 4G, is where consumers took off applications like Foursquare when it was brand new, and it was like, oh, your phone can know where you are all the time. Maybe you can check into places. Awesome. And of course, that morphed into, oh, if your phone knows where you are and another phone knows where a car is and a driver is, then maybe we can bring the two together and you can get in the car, right? And there's Uber. And so now the question is with 5G, that's going to bring, yes, new consumer experiences in terms of things like extended reality, sports experiences, things like that. But for businesses especially, we're going to see advancements in industries like healthcare and retail and manufacturing and logistics that are going to automate old processes and create new opportunities for workers in those industries. So it really is an exciting time to be here and working in this field. And so my team's job is to explore those use cases, work with some of those enterprises, work with startups who are building out new types of technology, working with them on how to partner with enterprises so that they can help us build the future.
Incredible. That was a crash course in the potential and power of 5G. So thank you.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the different use cases and how it's going to transform our overall technology landscape, transform our lives. Can you share some potential examples or of, kind of like a beginner's crash course to 5G? If I'm somebody that isn't really tech savvy, how is 5G going to impact me on an individual level?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So, a question a lot of people are asking. The short answer is not so much at first. If you remember, let's go back into history again. When the iPhone first came out, what could you do with it? The answer is not a whole lot, right? It was all of these things that are packed into a single device, right? You had a calendar there, you had an internet browser, and BlackBerry had all these things already. But the device itself, the iPhone itself, was superior in the amount of computing power that it had, and so it allowed users to download applications and run them, and moreover, it allowed developers to create applications and then upload those into Apple's App Store, right? And with BlackBerry, you never had that. Everything was a commissioned, sanctioned application. There was no Yo app, right, for BlackBerry. And if you guys don't remember Yo, then I strongly recommend you go up and Google the Yo app because it will change your life. But while the iPhone was still living in a 3G world, the most innovative application that we really had that took advantage of connectivity was Words with Friends, right? And the fact that you could be playing Scrabble with someone on the other side of the world. Lucy, you and I could be playing Scrabble from New York to Greece, but I could also be playing Scrabble on the same application with my mom in Texas, right? And so that up until that point, that was new. And this was just 10 years ago. And so when 4G was released in 2010, then you started seeing this new capability of the device. It was the same device, but all of a sudden it could do other things, right? And so now we have the opportunity for this connectivity to start playing a bigger role with consumers. So people like you, your question is like, what does it mean for you? Well, the first thing you're going to need is a 5G device. The technology and the connectivity itself works differently than 4G. And so with that device, then you're able to access and have access to those networks, right? And so what we're doing then is exploring new ways for consumers to start having augmented reality experiences. It's a big one. And that's going to be where some of the lowest hanging fruit for consumers is having augmented reality and then the potential for increased virtual reality applications. And so a lot of people like to talk about how, with 5G, you'll be able to download a movie to your device in like 6 seconds. And that's true, but like, do we download movies? Not really. Like, I don't download movies to my phone. We stream everything, right? And even if we are watching Netflix or consuming video content on our devices, we're streaming them. And so the only time you ever really download something is when you're about to be on a plane or something and have no expectation of reliable connectivity. That's when you download something. So we're trying to think about how consumers are going to start using things like mobile gaming and how mobile gaming and esports might begin to converge, because right now they're very, very different. If you're actually in competitive esports, then you're on a desktop and you more than likely have a tower that you have with you. And some competitive esports gamers will physically move to a different part of the country to be closer to the cloud server system that gaming platform uses, and they will make sure that they are living in a neighborhood that has reliable, ultra high speed internet connection, right? Most of the time, that's Verizon Fios. It's just a small plug there. And so with that being what esports look like, and then mobile gaming is so much different. Mobile gaming is playing a game on your phone, and there's not really, sure, you might be able to compete and do some sort of peer-to-peer gaming, but the connectivity isn't really there for that to be for those two worlds to be remotely similar. And now with 5G, you start to see some convergence of those two, right? You can use 5G not only for mobile gaming, but you can start using 5G for some of those esports where you used to have to be hardwired in using an Ethernet cable. Now we're starting to see, and we're working with a group called Digitas in Los Angeles to start thinking about how 5G is going to impact esports, right? And so the question of like you, Lucy, how is 5G going to impact you? That will evolve over time. So the first thing might be better wayfinding experiences or better augmented reality experiences for applications that you're already using, things like Instagram and Snapchat and things like that. Yeah, those do have AR built in, but what if they could be different and better and more enhanced, right? And what if, yeah, you can do wayfinding with Google Maps, but what if it was like venue-specific wayfinding? If it was wayfinding using AR in something like a sports stadium, to know how long, to just be able to look at your phone and have an AR interface that tells you where the nearest concessions are for exactly the thing that you're looking for and what the wait time is there. And so these are ways that we're starting to explore with 5G to see how consumers like you and me can start using can start applying some of this applications to the connectivity, or apply the connectivity to some of those applications. Moving on into the future, we're going to start seeing other types of smaller, almost IoT style devices for the individual, right? And so right now you have one device to rule them all, right? You got your mobile phone. It has the compute, it has the interface, it has everything that you need in order to do what you need to do, whether it's live or work or play, right? But if you think about how we actually process information on that device, we're looking at it, we're using our eyes, right? We're listening to it, we're using our ears, we're feeling the haptics of the feedback of the device. We're inputting stuff on the screen with our fingers, or we're talking to it, right? And you can start breaking these things down into stuff that might even be a better user experience. And so we're thinking about, we're looking at, and when I say we, I don't necessarily mean Verizon itself, but like as an expert in the field, I'm thinking about how AR or VR devices can better fit into our lifestyle and be connected into the network, as opposed to being connected to a hub device, right? How can a hearable, like I'm wearing right now, what if this was connected into the network? And what if this little hearable was able to order me an Uber? Just because I asked it to. Very similar to the movie Her with Joaquin Phoenix and Scarlett Johansson, if you ever saw that. We can do that. Like that can happen very, very soon. And so when you start thinking about what this ecosystem of connected devices is going to look like, it's going to be watches working in tandem with hearables, with visual wearables, with potentially haptics being sewn into your clothing and things like that. All of a sudden, you might not necessarily even need this device anymore. Now, there's still going to be room. The people who make those devices are going to branch out and start making other things that are taking advantage of that connectivity, because that's what they do. They're not necessarily phone manufacturers. They're device manufacturers that use connectivity to provide experiences. And so as an industry, we'll continue to work with them, and we'll continue to explore all the different ways that 5G can be impactful for consumers and for businesses. And all of this right now is just, it is informed speculation, right? Because if you were to ask me in 2010, like, what are going to be the impacts of 4G, which arguably brought streaming video, that was the killer app, to devices back then? Like, nobody would have said the gig economy. Nobody would have said ride sharing and Airbnb and being able to have like an assistant who lives in a different country halfway around the world, right? None of that could have been predicted. And so like we're doing our best to predict all of the applications and use cases for 5G. And we had a pretty good idea, especially when it comes to the business side, when it comes to IoT and what the future of that looks like. But ultimately, we're all on this awesome ride together, and it's an adventure, and it's pretty exciting, both on the folks who are looking at the use cases critically, and then the folks who are going to be experiencing those for the first time.
This is incredibly exciting and terrifying at the same time, but very, very cool that we'll have video footage of this conversation and we can look back on it in 2030 and see where the world has ended up.
Right. You'll see if I was just way off base.
I also think, I mean, given your background, your work with startups, your work with technology, with 5G, and just generally our accessibility as humans to information and data, I think predictions are getting to be more and more spot on. So it's but either way, it's very exciting to watch history in the making. And throwback to Yo app, like, wow, like good call out. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, they got funded. Like that company, seriously, they got like a Series A for a button that you hit on your phone that makes someone else's phone go, yo.
That was all it was. It was like 5. I remember it was just one user face. It was just one page and you could send yo, hi, what's up? Or like,
it was just yo. I think you could have, I can't remember. I think at the beginning you could have like 5 friends and you picked which friend you wanted and you would hit the yo button and their phone, no matter its state, their phone would just go, yo.
Yeah. Oh man, that was the coolest thing too. I remember, I think like being in college or like early in my professional career when that launched, and I was like, whoa, look at what technology can do. And now here we are. So who knows what the future holds?
Who knows? Yeah. I don't even know what happened to those guys. I wonder. It'd be worth looking up.
I Googled, the wiki page said, like just now, the wiki page said apparently it's evolved where you can like drop location and attach files, but I don't know how outdated. I mean, it could be from this year, it could be from 2 years ago, but
yeah.
Well, the use cases you said, like location, file transfer, any ideas around you've given a lot of great examples. Any other ones around what innovation in the industry could look like, or maybe kind of like a secret insider thought on, like Greece, 5G is coming to a market like Greece that is kind of still very much earlier in its maturity in terms of like technology innovation and digital transformation. Are there like quick wins or kind of like low hanging fruit that startuppers or founders or technologists could leverage 5G for, or is it still too early to tell?
No, I don't think it is too early. I think it's really good to be looking out for that. So we'll go back into history one more time, and we'll look at who was the king in 2007 as Steve Jobs was unveiling the iPhone. The answer was BlackBerry, right? They were, without a question, the leaders in the space of device technology and use case for the application, namely mail, calendaring, and BlackBerry Messenger, like the beginnings of real-time chat, right? And if there are anybody out here ever used BBM back in the day, it was a superior chat product. It was really, really good. And when the iPhone first came out, it could do some really interesting things that other phones couldn't do, but the user experience itself wasn't that great. Like it constantly caused network issues because it was drawing so much data from the network, asking it to do more than the network was really capable of doing at the time. And it had a battery. This was prior to lithium-ion technology, and so the battery lasted like 8 hours on standby. Right? If you weren't charging by lunchtime, like you were done. And so BlackBerry looked at that and they said, the user interface is so bad, the user experience is so bad that we don't have to worry about this. This is never going to catch on. And do you know what BlackBerry does now? Cybersecurity. They're not a phone manufacturer. They are completely out of that game. They specialize in cybersecurity. And it completely, and there was a lot of other factors that went into it, but that was the major one that tanked their businesses. They did not read the market, and they did not read that this new technology, even though it was having some fits and starts at the beginning, represented the future. And so your question is, what is the advice when it comes to advanced connectivity and emerging technology? What's the advice to people who are thinking, trying to think, be forward thinking now? People like startup founders, people like technologists. And my advice is start planning now. Because if you haven't decided, or if you are not well on your way to figuring out how your product or service will evolve with advanced connectivity, I'm not saying you're too late, but you're late to the game, because it's coming. And in many cases, it's already here. With Verizon itself, it's in like 35 cities. We're going to be in 60 cities by the end of the year. We're actually ahead of schedule in how we're deploying 5G. And with advancements in things like dynamic spectrum sharing and carrier aggregation, then you're going to start seeing 5G be much more ubiquitous and perform much better than it has with a lot of other carriers and setups. And so, essentially, what that means is it's going to happen very quickly, that all of a sudden more people have access to 5G than you thought they did. And that includes customers, it includes businesses, it includes lots of people. And if you're not thinking about how your product or service or offering is going to evolve with advanced connectivity, then your customers are going to go find someone who is. Because it's not necessarily about you and what your product does, it's about what your customers' expectations are. And so if your customers are asking two questions. They're asking, how is 5G going to impact our product or service? But they're also asking, how is it going to impact our competitors' product or service? And they're asking, how is it going to impact our vendors' products or services? And if you're not able to keep up with them, and you haven't thought ahead into how you're going to evolve what you do now, then you stand the chance of your customers going and finding somebody else. And you're going the way of BlackBerry. And let's be honest, nobody wants that. And so I think the key takeaway there is that there's enough documentation out there that talks about what 5G is, what it's going to impact, how it's going to impact, all of the different types of applications that it's going to impact. And the thing to do is to start becoming familiar with all of that, because the time is now to start staffing for that when it comes to your developers and your technologists. The time has come to start thinking about what new product development looks like, what do not necessarily new features look like, but what do entirely new offerings look like that solve new problems. Because we all know that what is it? Creative disruption. I can't remember the phrase, but the fact that new technology comes out and it solves a bunch of problems, but it creates new ones, right? And so there's two areas there. How can you provide value using the connectivity, but then how can you also help solve problems that are going to arise, or challenges that companies are going to face when they start adopting more advanced connectivity type applications within their business? And so I think the takeaway there is that the information is out there, and now's the time to start really diving in and thinking about how your company is going to evolve. Because there's people who do it well, and there's people who don't do it well. A company that does it well, Amazon. Amazon sold books. They were trying to disrupt Barnes and Noble, and then all of a sudden, everyone had a device, and they had persistent, reliable connectivity, and Amazon decided, well, we can sell everything, and we can do it in real time. And then they found out that they had all this excess computing power with their cloud servers, and they said, we can offer up server space and resources using the same type of connectivity. And they completely reshaped their business because connectivity and device technology allowed them to. And so I'm not saying that you have to be Amazon and completely go into and try to explode what you're offering to customers, but you really need to start thinking critically about how your service offering and maybe even the entire mission of your company might change.
Lots of decisions and disruptions to be made.
Mm-hmm.
So we are going to shift more into kind of like founder startup world a little bit before we zoom out and chat about Verizon a little more. So, what makes a great founder? What makes somebody ramp up to be a potential Amazon, a potential Uber, a potential disruptor in this space?
Yeah, I think it really is um, paying attention to paying attention to trends, but that will only get you so far. And it's going to be really thinking about, like we talked about, really thinking about what you have to offer. And then you and I talked about this in an article that you wrote for the Port, I think 2 years ago. And it was about not necessarily being married to the outcome, but being more focused on the process and being more focused on what you bring to the table and what your company brings to the table, and being able then to shift what that outcome looks like based on the resources that you have available. And so you might have an excellent team, you might have built an amazing company, but what makes a good founder in the emerging technology space is going to be a realization that technology is constantly changing and improving. Connectivity is constantly changing and improving. Even with 4G never stopped. We're still advancing 4G technology. When 4G was first released in 2010 in the lab, they saw a maximum of 100 megabits a second as a downlink speed, right? Now, with 4G alone, if you're in a major metropolitan area, you can get 120, 130, 140 megabits a second download. That's crazy. Like compared to what it was when it first was released and what most people get now, which is an average of like 30 to 40 megabits a second. So we've already, just in 10 years, have put enough attention into this technology that we surpassed what the original intent was, right? And so the stuff never stops growing and changing. And so I think to be an effective founder and have an effective company, there's a couple of things. One is to focus more on the process of how you can deliver something versus what you can deliver. And the second is take a look around and see who else is doing that from a larger company, maybe partnership perspective. A lot of what we do is either as a company partnering with other startups to help co-create new technologies, or even helping the startups that we have worked with, matching them with other enterprise companies that we work with and saying, hey, huge corporate company, you are a customer of ours and you're trying to solve these problems, and with the right type of connectivity and with the right type of technology, that problem can be solved. We can supply the connectivity. Let's go over here and talk to this other company that we've talked to, the startup that we've talked to, that we've worked with, that has built a solution that we think could be applied to this. And let's get all three of us in a room and let's all work together to make this happen. And so you're going to start seeing that more and more as larger companies, they continue to see the value of targeted partnerships. I think the age of acquisitions might be coming to an end. You take a look at Jet, which was purchased by Walmart for a lot of money. And even though Walmart's online sales have been rising, they pulled the plug on Jet just a few weeks ago. And they said that the type of company that this was and the type of services that they brought to us ended up not being what we were looking for. And so they just sunsetted the whole thing, right? And that was, how much money did they lose on that? And so a lot of companies have been in that position where they all went out and snatched up a bunch of companies for tons and tons of money. And now those bets aren't necessarily paying off for a wide variety of reasons, whether it's a technology issue or a culture issue or what have you, or even just a trends shifting issue. And so I think you're going to see a lot more companies be more looking at those targeted partnerships more than acquisition, which is an awesome opportunity for founders because you get to continue to grow your company. But now you have a larger company saying, this is what the market's asking. This is what the market's going to bear. This is where you can start creating technology and have this avenue and this outlet for it with this larger partner that has brand recognition and equity, and has other customers that are willing to experiment and try new things because they have the backing of that larger partner. Right. And so I think as a founder, it'll be important to keep abreast of the technology, focus on the process, and then keep an eye out for how you can partner with other larger organizations that can help you validate your technology and your ideas, and further explore that partnership route instead of being myopic and thinking about acquisition all the time. And some founders they're in it for the exit, and they're really looking for the exit. But I think we're going to see less and less of that and more of the partnerships.
makes a lot of sense. It's also just a really nice alternative for those who aren't in the exit game to really hold on to the child that you've built from day one, right?
Mhm.
So specifically within Verizon, you've talked a little bit about how like Verizon, big corporations like Verizon, like other strategic large corporations are partnering as a way to drive innovation, to kind of expand their product set. So,
Mhm.
what is the company culture and the innovation culture like within Verizon? How are innovative and creative solutions fostered on your team, for example?
Yeah, it certainly is a great question to be asking even right now, as everyone's trying to figure out how do we start going back to work and how do we start creating value and new types of value when this whole coronavirus pandemic ends. Um, Recognizing that makes this not quite so evergreen, but I don't think anyone's going to forget what the coronavirus was anytime soon. It varies, right? And so, as such a large company, Verizon, I think is a massive company. It's in the Fortune top 20. I think it's 15 or 14, something like that. 135,000 employees, and so it can be culture can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. And so I think having what Verizon is good at, I think, is listening to its employees and paying attention to how customer needs and expectations are changing. And I'll give you an example of that. Right now, as we speak, uh, my team is running an internal program that is soliciting ideas from anyone within the company about how Verizon can bring its resources, its technology, its capabilities to bear to create solutions for not only our customers, but for society as a whole in a post-pandemic world. And so this is something that we've never done before, at least not on this scale. We've run internal challenges, and of course, my team is responsible for running a lot of external challenges, working with startups to get them to rapidly create new technologies and new product development. But we've turned that lens inward, and we've said, we would say, hey, if you have an idea about how we can contribute to this, whether it's from your experience working with the company or whether it's your experience with family or friends or your own experiences with this crisis, let us know. Let us know what you think and how you think we can apply this technology. And we've had over 1,000 responses in just a couple of weeks. And my team has been going through and seeing which of them have some real capability to drive some change in society. And we're going to drive those into the business and see that they get tested out and see that they get prototyped and see if they can actually do something that helps people. And so that's a way that we are saying we have the innovative ideas already here within the company, and we're going to tap into that, and we're going to see what we can do together. Now, that model is not new, right? A lot of times that is considered like an internal innovation program, and there's lots of other companies out there that specialize in helping companies run programs like this. And they can take a lot of different shapes and sizes, but rarely are they applied company-wide across more than 100,000 people, and giving everyone the opportunity to participate and actually see this thing grow. And so I think that as a company focused on technological change, it is incumbent upon us, and we take the responsibility seriously, to know that the way that we operate and the way that we provide services out into the world has to grow along with that technology and alongside that technology. And so it's one of those things where there's no proven model for how to do it. And so we try some things work, some things don't, and we try to continue moving forward together.
Awesome. Staying agile even within the bigger corporation framework, which is fantastic.
Trying to, yeah.
And so, what's next that you're able to share for Verizon 5G Labs, and has it changed at all with COVID?
Oh man. So a big thing that we do is bring startups into our labs to actually test on our experimental networks. We have labs, we have 6 or 7 of them all around the world. We have all around the world, mostly in the US, one in London, and we'll see if we end up expanding any further. But they all have private 5G networks that, for the purpose, they're there for testing, for us to bring startups in to test the things around gaming or media capture and production and consumption, or robotics or augmented and virtual reality, all sorts of things. And so obviously now we can't go in the lab. And so we can't bring startups in to do a lot of this testing. And so what we've turned our focus toward is partnerships. So yes, everyone's working from home, but we are exploring partnerships with some large organizations, some small organizations, about how we can start providing connectivity-driven applications and services to contribute to some of the work that they're trying to do, because we're not the only ones that are trying to take everything online. So we've done a couple of things. We're working with some of those larger partners to figure out how they can virtualize their value offering, but then we virtualized our own. We took that lab experience that I just described, and anything that could be made virtual, we turned into a full-on VR experience where users can drop into the lab, and they can sit through a presentation. They can hear about what we're trying to do with 5G. They can see demos and examples. You can watch video clips inside the virtual environment. And we're doing this so that we can not lose any of this steam that we've created. Working with some of our larger partners, we're able to bring them in, show them what 5G can do, the power of 5G, and then start to brainstorm and co-create solutions with them. Now, a time will come soon where we're able to start reaching back out to the startup community and start driving innovation that way. But just the same as everybody else, we're working with what we have. And so we're saying that we have quite a few resources. We're deploying them. We're tweaking them a little bit, deploying them in a different way. And we're still bringing people into the lab to see what we can do and see how we can all work together.
Awesome. So still finding ways to bridge the gaps that the current situation has created.
Mm-hmm.
And what are some technologies that you're personally passionate about? Startups, 5G related, not 5G related, given your tech background?
Oh, that's a good question. What am I excited about? I'm excited about that personal digital ecosystem that I talked about. I'm excited about the IoTification and the connection of everything, creating a seamless spatial environment where everything is virtualized, and spatial computing becomes the norm. And spatial computing is the idea that you can use the space around you, either in a physical or in a virtual environment, to create outcomes, right? And virtual reality and augmented reality are examples of that. And so what is going to happen, though, is when everything connects into the network and everything doesn't rely on Wi-Fi anymore, doesn't rely on those hub devices anymore, when my earbuds can sync into the network, and my glasses that show me AR or VR experiences can sync into the network, and my watch syncs into the network. All of it knows who I am, and it knows that it's mine, right? And so not only is my stuff synced into the network, but everyone else's stuff is synced into the network. The smart city is synced into the network, because you have 5G powering traffic cameras and traffic analysis algorithms. And so now you start being able to get information delivered to you, not necessarily just that's within your own line of sight or range of hearing or anything like that, but what the city knows and what the community knows is happening. An example might be a car that ran a red light and is barreling toward an intersection and about to make a blind turn around the corner, and I can't see it, and I'm about to cross the street. Now, if the city is connected and the roadways are connected into the network, and I'm connected into the network via the peripherals that I have, now all of a sudden I can start getting audio messages, video messages, haptic messages of stop, 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 don't step into the crosswalk because a speeding car just went by taking that turn that I didn't know was coming, and I would have got hit. right? And so now you start seeing about what does that mean for all these other cars that are on the road? Well, you see, whenever you see diagrams of autonomous vehicles, it's showing things like the radar and the LiDAR, and like what's the range of all these things, and what can it see and what can it not see. But that's actually just a one-dimensional way of looking at it, because an autonomous vehicle driving on city streets is not going to have only its own experience to rely on, its own data to rely on. It's going to have the data and the experiences of everything else around it. And so your vehicle is going to know where there's traffic and where there's not. It's going to know where there's risk spots and where there's not. It's going to know what the best route is because it's connected in and it can see everything else that's happening around it. And so that's this true type of network-based spatial interface that I think devices, robotics, people, all of them are going to have. And it's going to be really interesting to start seeing how you start applying AI towards this, right? Because if you can use AI to determine whether or not you can get hit by a car, like what else can you do with it? Can you use sentiment analysis to tell you information about the people around you? A lot of people have thought about, like, if you see somebody, if you have these types of devices on you and you see a friend of yours on the sidewalk, can you like play some sort of a game with that person or have some sort of interaction with that person? I think the answer will be yes, but can you also learn about that person using AI based on how they're moving, based on their facial expression? Can you tell if that person's in a hurry or not? I think there's a lot of information that can be gleaned. And as you start seeing the IoT-ification of everything else, you're going to start seeing all of these millions and millions and billions of data points that can then be applied through AI algorithms. Now, we're not talking about Skynet and robots attacking us or anything like that, but you're talking about the ability to have so much more information at your fingertips and be able for it to be analyzed to accommodate for better decision making. And that means better decision making for machines like cars, but it also means better decision making for people like us. That type of technology, it sounds super futuristic. Literally everything I described is possible now if it is pieced together in the right ways.
Insane. We are living the future as we speak.
Mm-hmm.
And so what would your response be to people that might be more reluctant to adopt technology, especially at this scale? Could be because of generational differences, could be because the different regions of the world are just slower to adopt different kinds of emerging tech. What would your response be, and maybe what might be a smaller first step, that digestible step for people that are reluctant?
Yeah, and there's always this spectrum, right? You still have people now who I think it was highlighted due to this pandemic that there's like a good 17% or so of Americans that don't have a smartphone, and people like you and me, we think about that and we're like, well, what do you do all day? Right. But there's always going to be people who don't want to adopt that. There are people who don't have very good Wi-Fi, there are people, Lucy, who don't use Netflix. I know, right? And so like it's almost like a standard question of like, what are you watching on Netflix? And if you're like, I've never had anyone say, oh, I don't have Netflix. Like, no, like everyone in my circle has Netflix. Everyone in New York City has Netflix. But there are people who choose not to adopt these things. My mom was talking about, she bought a DVD the other day. I'm like, you bought a what? Why did you do that? I literally don't have anything that can play a DVD. And so, yeah, there are generational things. There are geographic things that are going to prevent certain parts of the world from adopting advanced technology. And there's a lot of other concerns too. I mean, people are going to make the best decisions for themselves based on the information that they have and based on how they perceive that the technology is going to impact their lives. And so I think that I don't necessarily have anything to say to them per se, or to say to that, other than there are trade-offs, and one of the trade-offs to being connected all the time with a smartphone is that you're connected all the time with a smartphone, and that can be super annoying sometimes. And you hear people say like, "Oh, wouldn't it be nice if I could just disconnect from my phone for a day?" Like, you can do that. Just turn the thing off or leave it at home. It's not hard. But I mean, it's incredibly difficult for someone to actually fathom what they would do if they didn't have that connectivity. Like, when's the last time you forgot something like your wallet and you were like, I'm all right. I'll deal with it. If you forget your phone and you make it to the end of the block, you're going back. Like, you're not leaving the house without that thing. And so I think that there will be things like a tiered adoption of new technology, like there always has. 5G, unfortunately, is not necessarily this savior of a technology that's going to connect all of the rural and suburban areas of the world. It actually has new challenges as far as uh, 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 like penetration or spread, right? There's a word there, I'm just not thinking of it. Deployment, yeah, it's actually a little more difficult to deploy 5G than it is 4G, but there are some types of technologies, new technologies that are going to assist with that. Now, what that means, though, is it's not going to be the family farm out in the middle of Iowa that all of a sudden has 5G when before they didn't have anything. It's going to be really difficult. So if you don't have 4G now and you're struggling with that as far as like rural broadband, 5G isn't necessarily going to solve that problem. Now, there are advancements that might help solve that problem, but it's not going to be this thing where it just turns on and all of a sudden you have this super duper advanced connectivity. And so, yeah, there's going to be some folks that are not early adopters or mainstream adopters for a variety of reasons. And I think the more that we as a society and as a community of technologists can start creating use cases and value propositions that take advantage of technology that can help those people solve the problems that are important to them, I think that will assist in the adoption of more of those technologies. And I think you're starting to see that more and more, especially now, especially I think in a post-pandemic world, you're going to see a lot of companies and services really paying attention to corporate social responsibility. And that was on an upward track anyway. If you paid attention to the stuff that was coming out of Davos earlier this year, CSR is a big deal. And Davos being the World Economic Forum, it's corporate social responsibility, societal impact, and societal good are big deals that companies are starting to take really seriously now. And I think this has only enhanced that or sped it up or accelerated it. And so I think you're going to start seeing everything from larger companies to hopefully small startups start thinking about not only how can I make money and satisfy stakeholders, but how can we actually make sure that we're making a beneficial impact on the world. And I think the more that you do that, then the more that people are going to be incentivized to get connected, because there are actually value that they're going to find out of that wasn't there before.
Yeah, people are looking for more and more sustainable meaning in how they're consuming things. The value has taken on a new term, I think, during this period, which is quite
Mm-hmm.
interesting, and hopefully has brought to light uh, more meaningful and sustainable and overall beneficially globally values. So
Mm-hmm.
it's definitely an interesting time to be a part of the world, in the business world, and the tech world. And now we'll shift to a couple of questions about you and your inspirations. So is there a motto or mantra that you live by in work and life?
Uh, there's one mantra, and then there is, I guess, a motto or a mantra number two. I moved to New York 8.5 years ago, with no job, no friends, and no place to live. And I started adopting or pushing myself into industries and career circles that I had no prior experience in. I have an undergrad degree in finance, and here I am talking to you about emerging technology. Um, I almost didn't move here. And a friend of mine had this piece of advice for me, which I've shared with probably dozens or hundreds of other people. And it applies to people who have that imposter syndrome, who don't necessarily feel like they can make it in a particular city, or can make it in a particular industry, or can make it in a particular initiative, right? And the mantra is that to every third grader, a fourth grader is a god. Now, when you and I think about fourth graders, they don't know very much, right? They can't do very much. They can't even really sustain themselves. But to a third grader, man, that fourth grader knows what's up. And so the point there is that even if you don't think you're ready for something, or even if you don't think you can supply or provide value or new ideas or inspiration in a particular environment or initiative, get in there anyway. Because you know something that other people don't, and you have experiences that other people don't have, and you're able to provide viewpoints and insights that other people aren't able to. And people will find value in that. And it's the trick there is knowing enough about the environment that you're going into and seeing where you can supply targeted value and become the person, the it person for that particular thing, and then expand on that. And so that's what actually got me through the move to the big city from mostly suburban Texas. And it's kept me here this whole time. And then the other piece of that, the other thing that I generally live by, which has come with me all the way from childhood, is just having a figure it out mentality. When you have struggles or obstacles or anything really, it's not a question of like, am I going to get through this? It's a question of, well, I guess it's time to figure it out. Because here we are in a global pandemic that has completely upended pretty much everything. And the winners are going to be the ones who said, this sucks, but let's figure it out. And I think the losers are going to be the ones who said, well, let's just hunker down and wait for it to return to normal. Like, I don't think that's going to be the case. I think we're going to find that the people who said, I have no idea what I'm doing, but we're going to figure it out. I think those are the ones who are going to come out on top. And I think as far as the rapid evolving pace of technology and society, I think those are going to be the ones that win overall.
Definitely. That was so inspiring. Every artist was once an amateur, so they say, right?
There you
And
go.
way
That's
out through. I love living by the quotes and aphorisms. I think,
right.
yeah, Greece in particular has been a very interesting market and place and environment and energy to be around, because the rhetoric is basically that because Greece has overcome just barely the longest crisis known to mankind, financially, humanitarian
Mm-hmm.
wise, and now they're getting hit with this. It's kind of like they've already built that muscle, and that muscle took a decade for them to really kind of like go through acceptance, really figure out what's next, put their heads down and be like, let's power through this. Let's figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's figure outable. And
Yep.
so, yeah, this next wave of what a post-COVID world will look like, I think will bring a lot of, will definitely kind of separate what the oil from the water in terms of
Mm-hmm.
who's going to power through.
Yep.
And what inspires you? What inspires you, and what uncharted waters are ahead for you?
Oh, what inspires me? I like, I am inspired by communities that come together um, and can help each other move forward. Um, I am inspired by um, I'm inspired by people who have ideas um, and communicate them in ways that help paint a picture of optimism for other people. And I think we're seeing a lot of that these days. And so it's been very inspiring to be here and be seeing all of the different ways that people are finding to help people, and to sometimes to help people help themselves. Um, uh, my uncharted waters, I really do enjoy translating that community building passion into working with startups who want to start thinking more critically about emerging technology, into building communities of enterprises that want to start moving forward with emerging technology, figuring out how to either bring those two together or how each of them can chart their own path through what's coming, through what's coming at us as far as technology and the situation that we find ourselves in. And so the work that I'm doing is extremely rewarding, and I really do love it a lot. And I think that I will continue to work with organizations and individuals on how they can start using emerging technologies and concepts and trends and behaviors, how they can start or continue or reshape how they're using those things to create new types of value, whether that's value as far in their businesses or value in their careers. I do a lot of mentoring with students and young professionals. That's something that I don't see stopping anytime soon. I don't currently have any plans to leave the company or anything like that. I really do find the work that I do rewarding, and I love what I do. But whatever comes next, I think it'll still be within that arena of helping people navigate those uncharted waters.
Amazing. And on this note, we're going to wrap up. And thank you again, Josh, for joining us and sharing your invaluable 5G and tech insights. And on note of community and connecting, this recording we're doing it live right now, but it will be available on YouTube. So if you want to connect with Josh, learn more about his work, you'll find his LinkedIn bio in the description of the YouTube channel below. And we also just want to remind everyone that we are on deck, as we say it, for you and available during these really crazy times and beyond. So we'll also include a link of kind of our on deck office hours that we've been hosting throughout this period where the world is really in crazy navigation mode. So thank you again to everyone who's joined us over this past month. It has been a lot of fun. And really, Joshua, it's just like so fun to be able to talk about what we're passionate about and kind of bring our friendship live to the Thought Import stage. So thank you
Yeah.
again. And we'll
Yeah,
see.
my pleasure. Thank you to you, Lucy, for setting all this up, and Vasiliki and Tanaya for helping make all this happen and being part of this. And I was super excited to be involved. So thanks, everyone.
Thanks.